Hey moguls, it's Dr. T here, and we're going to do an upgrade today that's really going to help open us up, awaken us, and really help us shift from dealing with a lot of pain in life and really making a lot of gains. And when we make a shift like that, that can be just worth millions of dollars of value to us and the quality of life that we attain, and millions in our bank account. So it's really worthwhile to explore these things. So, what I really want us to consider today is this incredible paradox that I am exploring, and I wanted to invite you into it, that has to do with, again, this interesting paradox of why are humans simultaneously a mass population of people seeking to avoid pain, right? And that's really important. They're a mass population of people seeking to avoid pain, while at the same time staying in situations, circumstances, scenarios, and with people that are painful. It's very confusing. It's a paradox. Why are people who are the most pain avoidant population that there is, why at the same time are people who are constantly seeking to avoid pain staying in situations, scenarios, circumstances, and with people and in areas and just in reality that is so freaking painful? It's really a conundrum. I'm really just exploring this myself, and I thought I'd invite you in to explore this about why that is. My sense is that throughout human history and the whole trajectory of humanity, as we continued to be in the dark about how reality works, what it is, and how to navigate it successfully so we can just thrive in it and completely be infinite in it, that at all of the points with which humans were just in the dark trying to figure it out, I mean, the reality is a lot of pain has happened. People have suffered a lot. And so you would think that that pain would then be okay. That's how that thing works. It doesn't work like this. It works better like that. Let me make the adjustment and let me go toward more my intentions, or what people might say, go toward the pleasure. I just say go toward your intentions. But what happens instead is that people experience pain out of really a lack of consciousness. So pain happens, and then instead of going toward higher intentions, that pain gets programmed into people individually and collectively. And then people begin trying to avoid pain. And instead of, like, the old example that everybody gives is like, you burn your hand on the stove, ouch. And now you don't want to burn your hand on the stove anymore, so you don't do that anymore. So we say, oh, we learned something, but then we're not going to go in that direction anymore, which is very different than the process of going toward the pleasure and toward the higher intentions in general. Because you think, theoretically, if you did that, you wouldn't be burning yourself. And yet it seems like, because there were in history so many things that people didn't understand, and these things happened as a result of exploration, then people go, I'm not going to go do that anymore. So then they start the process, or they continue the process of being pain avoidant instead of, I'm going to go toward the awesomeness where nothing's burning. um, that whole cycle of avoiding pain happens. But my sense is, as I explore this, is that because the orientation got created around the pain, like, ouch, that hurt, I don't want to pain anymore. Because now the orientation is avoid, avoid pain, avoid pain, avoid pain. Because the conceptualization and the orientation is about pain, more pain comes, because reality is just a function of physics. And in physics, whatever is will make more of itself. That's why when we focus on something awesome, that will make itself, and it will also make more of itself if we keep focusing on it. So my sense is, because there are a set of things that we don't know at a given time in humanity, and there's people are in the dark, so to speak, and they don't know how reality works, and they're just trying to figure it out. Sometimes things happen and they get the pleasure from it. And then we do know that they try to seek more of that reward. And then much of the time, people have painful experiences and there's a massive amount of pain. And then they don't want that anymore. So their focus is avoid, avoid, avoid that, avoid that. And I think what happens is that they become people who are, like, backing away from that, and their orientation is about pain and the pain that happened and avoiding pain, because it's like, oh my God, got my hand burnt in the stove, so I don't want to, or the fire, around the campfire, I don't want to do that anymore. And the orientation becomes around pain. And the bummer about that for all of us has been and is that then you become oriented to avoid pain. And the very orientation of avoiding pain is what brings about more pain, because you've now begun to have a mental, emotional, intellectual, conceptual process around avoiding pain, instead of the learning process, which is intuitively just going toward pleasure, getting the pleasure feedback, and seeking that more and more and more and more and more. And yet, where that does occur is that people will get that in drugs, alcohol, things like that. And so they will get some reward and then seek that. But that feels more like it's about countering pain still, rather than just going toward the highest intentions. So we've got a real paradox here. The fact that humans ever experience pain in the darkness they were in, and the mystery about reality, sets it up so there's an orientation around it. And then it makes it so you actually begin to orient around it, and you begin to create a world of pain that is normalized. When the very thing that you don't want is what you're oriented to, and that is a real real paradox, and some might call it a trap that humans are in. Because also, when you experience pain, it's incredibly intense. And it seems like there's way more of an imprint for that extreme intensity than there is an imprint for people going toward what makes them happy. You don't, people are like, oh my God, I'm so scarred from this amazing fun time that I had. Like, I can't wait to do it again or talk about it again or experience it again. I mean, people do a little of that by remembering this stuff, but it's kind of fascinating how we get so thoroughly imprinted that I think it's like as what Eckhart Tolle calls it, a collective pain body, where there's just so much pain that you end up orienting around it and not having it. And it ends up creating, unfortunately, I think, a big aspect of people's identity. So I think, see how different that is than somebody going, like, every time people say interact with people, it's way more rare for people to just keep talking about how much happiness they have or had in an experience. Most people get together, pain bond or what's called trauma bonding, and they share that. And then what happens in pain is that I think because in the darkness that people experience and the confusion and the fear, then one of the big strategies that happened in humanity was this thing, which is like, hey, I know this is effing painful, but it's okay because we're all in pain. And now somehow that's supposed to raise your frequency, alleviate your pain. And what I see the paradox is here with this strategy that people just like came up with, like, well, yeah, you're suffering big time, but you know what? So is everybody. Like, all that did is create another paradox, which is, okay, here's some compassion and a teeny bit of boost that I'm not the only friggin' loser struggling in pain. But now it normalized it. And so, well, everybody's in that. And my sense is some are, some aren't, based on our human design, based on the fact that I've known a lot of people that aren't suffering in that kind of difficulty. And I have a feeling there are plenty of people not suffering in that difficulty, but the more pain for certain people became intense, the more it became normalized, then it became more contagious. Just like, oh yeah, everybody's in that. Oh yeah, that's part of life. Well, not completely. It seems that it's part of life for people who constantly are oriented to it. And oriented to it can mean that you're oriented to not experiencing it, which therefore still means you're oriented to pain. And that your life is directionally set up to avoid pain, which still puts you as oriented to it, because instead of your life could be oriented to purpose, your life could be oriented to flow, your life could be oriented to fun. And whatever it's oriented to, the truth is, if it were oriented to the very things you wanted, as much as it's oriented to avoiding pain, i.e., it's oriented to pain, that would make a huge shift. It does. That's what in all of our training programs, that's what we've seen in all of our clients. So this paradox is a tricky one because the way to navigate out of the paradox of pain and therefore pain avoidance being the very way you end up in more painful experiences is to reorient yourself to something different and something much higher frequency, something that feels better, something that is better, something that does better, creates better, and creates flow and peace and harmony and fun and ease and all of that stuff. But I think ultimately, because we normalized it, I think this concept that everybody's just going to experience it. Everybody experiences. I think that is the case because that got normalized. When the truth is, in our societies, there are people that whatever's going on, they've got the avenue to more and more and more pleasure, more and more and more pleasure, more and more flow. And that is because the people of the world who have that have oriented to that. And their entire orientation and identity is built around enjoyability, productivity, fabulosity. And there are a lot of people, it's a very small fraction of the population, but it's still a lot of humans who are so oriented toward success, toward fun, toward productivity, toward creativity, toward play, and toward creating a reality that just allows them to have anything they need at any given moment for any given situation. And they have it. And they're able to do that. Them and their people, and they're able to set that up in their reality. So through this contemplation of this paradox and all my experience in transformation, transforming other people, transforming myself, having a transformation company, I am 100% positive that orienting to something higher, much, much higher in the relative frequency of reality than to the big goal of avoiding pain is most certainly a game changer. And that if you are in a reality where avoiding pain is what is your subconscious and maybe even conscious intention, like the one that overrides everything, then I'm pretty positive that that's what you're going to experience more of. However, if your orientation is towards something higher, a higher reality, something greater than you, because the bigger it is compared to you, which is there's only so much of you, there's only so much energy, but something that's much greater than you, orienting toward that allows you, and orienting that as your primary awareness allows you to become reoriented, quite honestly, out of the pain pleasure continuum, which is really helpful because that's a real base, animalistic, non evolved, non civilized, and non sophisticated way of being, because we're thousands of years evolved now. And we don't need to be so primitive and primally just like savagely like oriented away from pain and oriented toward pleasure on that continuum. What we can do is make a shift into being oriented toward higher intentions and a purpose that is greater. Something that can give us, because guess what? Say you have a big reality that you want to create, and it's awesome and it's fun and it's helpful and it's wealthy and it's enjoyable. As you orient to that, you start to get all of the energy from all of that. You start to get all of the creativity. You start to get wealthy from that. And the more you commit to reorienting yourself to this new orientation of your higher, much, much higher intentions, now you're on a different continuum. You're on a more sophisticated, intelligent continuum of reality. And what's fun about that is that the way that the laws of physics work is that whatever there is, there'll be more of it. And so the more you go into your higher intentions and your vision for a higher reality, and the more you keep orienting and orienting and orienting and orienting, the more of it can show up because you've essentially reoriented yourself. And the more of it that shows up, quite honestly, then the more of it'll show up. And then the more of that shows up, the more of it will show up. And then the more of that shows up, the more exponential it gets until you are just in that new reality. And now you can keep orienting to what is higher than that and higher than that. And the good news is that it's no more effort to be in your highest reality than it is to be in your lowest reality or your most painful reality. However, it does take making the transformation and doing the reorientation. Because if you just decide you want something to happen and you think about it for 2 seconds or 5 minutes or 1 hour, but you're still programmed and you're still oriented to the avoid pain continuum, you will still be in you'll be doing things. You'll be trying to make things happen, but you'll be in that continuum. And that's very different than orienting toward something rather than away from something. Very important. Completely toward it just means that it's primary in your attention. And what you're doing has to do with that. And just going toward those intentions, and as we say, going all in. Going all in for it, because the only thing keeping you from having all the reality that you want is that you need to go all in for it. And we also got to watch from having parts of our reality that are counter to the very one we are wanting. Right? So if we are wanting a life full of authenticity, transparency, easy flowing communication that is authentic, well, it wouldn't make sense to go toward people who are inauthentic, lying, suppressive, repressive, and unable to communicate on a higher level. Just wouldn't go, it wouldn't make any sense. So the invitation is to go toward what you're intending at the highest level and to orient to it more and more and more and more and more. And the more that we do that, we don't even have to worry about what not to orient to in the avoid thing. All we have to do is orient completely and completely and completely all the way, all the way, all in for the intentions. So my invitation to all of you is to just select an intention that you have. It might be for a power couple relationship. It might be to become a wealthy mogul. It might be to build an amazing multi-generational family dynasty. It might be to build your empire. But we got to orient to it. So you're invited to just pick one today. And you're invited to orient to that on every level, over and over and over again. Right? This is not a 2-minute a day thing. It's not a 1 minute a day thing. It's not a 10-minute a day thing. This is about an all inness and being oriented to the reality you intend. And when we go all in for it, rather than dispersing our attention to literally everything and everywhere and situations that are counter to it, we go all in for it, then we saturate ourselves into that experience. We immerse that experience. We actually saturate our reality with it. And we start to get in a different continuum of reality. We start to get into the intentional reality field, taking you out of this. And the intentional reality field, by the way, is a very high frequency. It's way up the frequency scale. And the pain, avoid pain continuum is down at the bottom of the frequency scale, which means life, not life, or not life, not life. So this is your invitation. Pick an intention, pick a higher intention, pick the highest intention. And let's have you orient to it completely. Let's have you live, breathe, eat, and sleep it. Let's have you become one with it. And about going toward it, about embracing it completely, about being one with it. Okay, so right now, you're one with pain or pain avoidance in general, with a few moments of happiness here or there. This is an orientation that also takes it out of just pain and pleasure, or happy, or it just takes it into the reality that you want. So again, connect to the reality you want, which is way more productive than just like, I want to be happy, which is not as creative and productive as connect fully to the reality that you're intending. And that, and complete commitment to that, is one of the most, if this is the most productive and effective and efficient thing I've ever done in transformations where people have been in a lot of pain and we've gotten them out of that orientation and into the orientation of reality making, intentional reality making. And you can do it too. Okay, so it'd be great to see each of you comment in the comment section for this video a higher intention that you have that you're going to orient to and become one with, replacing this other reality context that you've been in. So feel free to comment on it. I'm excited to connect with it. And let's share our intentions together and become one with them. All right, everyone. Thanks for receiving this upgrade. See you next time. Bye-bye.